Oh, this is called being in the spotlight. As you'll find out as the day goes on, I probably had the least to do with this program of anybody, but I've been chosen to welcome all of you, and thank you very much for coming. First of all, I'm immensely proud of the program as arranged today and this film that you're about to see. I'm also immensely proud of this building. For those of you who are here for the first time, this is the masterwork of one of the world's great architects, Norman Foster. Somewhere in the back is Gil Mora, who led the architectural team that brought this beautiful building together. We hope you enjoy it. We're very proud of it. And this is the Joseph Urban Theater that we're sitting in. He was a set designer who worked for William Randolph Hearst and did the original building that you see at the bottom of this great tower. So that gives you a little history. I happen to be associated with Hearst for 70 years, in case you're wondering what I'm doing here. And for almost 30 of those, I was the chief executive, and I'm now the executive vice president, and it's a vice chairman, I should say. And it is a delight to see you here and hope very much that you enjoy the building. We welcome you. I know you're going to enjoy the program. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce the Dean of Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, Linda Freed.
Well, good afternoon. Really a pleasure to welcome you all here. And Frank, I can't see you over the podium, but thank you for hosting us today at this beautiful Joseph Urban Theater. I'm so grateful to you and the entire Hearst team for helping us organize this event. And to Mary Lake Pullen, who's in the front, a huge thank you for your vision that inspired this event, no less the film that we're going to see, and for your long and unwavering partnership with Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health. And on behalf of Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health, I'm so pleased to welcome all of you here today as we spend time discussing what I think is a critically important topic for all of us, the relationship between health in our longer lives and community building. I've served as Dean of Columbia's Mailman School for 15 years, and each day our students and faculty are tackling the most pressing and important public health challenges, from how to create long lives that are also healthy, to climate change's effects on our health, to the obesity and gun violence epidemics, to helping communities flourish and creating equitable opportunity for health for everyone. One of the greatest public health issues of our time is the result of unprecedented, historic, significant advances. We have added 30 years to human life expectancy in the last 100 years. Think of that. Unprecedented. Never before. 25 of those 30 years came from public health. And these extraordinary advances thus far are celebrated, but also have come with a cost, which is that our aging population, which is all of us, is living longer lives with more ill health. The Butler Columbia Aging Center at the Mailman School leads national and global research on how to accomplish living healthier, not just longer lives, and how communities and societies around the world can support the creation of healthy longevity while creating societies built for the longer lives we've created. I was so thrilled when Mary Lake and Frank shared with me the film you're about to see, Below Surface, which is a compelling and moving depiction of how community building can combat loneliness while contributing significantly to healthy longevity, and how a program to build health can also build community. I'm looking forward to participating in a robust discussion after the film with leading experts in these areas, community building, aging, public health, which will be led by Gail King. And I think we're in for a treat. And we'll have an opportunity to reflect then and at the reception after on how we can all contribute to building a society that supports both healthy longevity for everyone and stronger communities. So on behalf of the community at Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, welcome.
I would see them all doing these sort of semi-synchronized motions.
I have never ever experienced anything like this before.
It's not only the body, but it's the soul.
I'm hoping to get to be 107, 108.
You have stripped yourself of all those things that determine who you are.
My heart really tore apart. A lot of people would never know.
There's so much more to an aquafit class than meets the eye.
It makes you feel alive.
Everybody has something that they're going through.
Well, thank you all for coming. We are very excited about this program. The movie, yes, and I have been really impressed with the response to the movie, but what we're all here for is to learn about healthy aging, healthy longevity. The data that we all think about, and particularly we have some high school students here, and I'm hopeful that they understand how important this is. It turns out that in 2017, there were about 17% of the United States population who are over 65. In 10 years from now, there will be more people over 65 in this country than under the age of 18. Now just think about what that means for you all who are around about 18 now. And the other piece of information that has been surprising and sort of frightening to me, if you look at all children who are 5 years old, your children, your grandchildren, half of those kids will live to be 100. And we hope that they will have healthy, productive lives, because it doesn't do anybody any good to live to be 100 and have the last 20 years spent in bed. And that's really why we're here. The film shows you that community is the thing that brings people together and keeps them functional. So we're going to have a panel discussion talking about how do we scale that? How do we do that for everybody? Because when half of the population is over 50 or 60, we have to change the way we look at aging and the way we deal with it. So I'm pleased to welcome the panel to the stage. We're going to talk about how do you take people and make them have long, productive lives. And I'm very also pleased to thank Hearst for letting us do this, to thank the Mailman School for bringing this together, and particularly to thank Gail King, who not only will be the moderator, but is also the YMCA cheerleader.
Mary Lake, you're not going to be up here with us, no? No. Oh. Oh, okay. Okay, good. Welcome, guys. I have to tell you, I was so moved by the last line of the film where he says, "I can't express how deeply I am moved by you wonderful people," because we live in a society today where I believe people are encouraged to be their worst possible selves and rewarded for it. So to see something as simple, you think you're going to a swim class And darned if that swim class doesn't turn into a community. That's what struck me about it, with all the different characters. How many of us on the panel have been to an Aquafit class? Just you. That is Marjorie Jean-Jacques. She is, I love saying your name, Marjorie Jean-Jacques. She's Vice President, Business Innovations and Partnerships of YMCA of Greater New York. Claire Casey is next to me. She's President of the AARP Foundation. Linda Freed, who is the big cheese over at the Public School of Health at Columbia University. My favorite daughter, Kirby, is a graduate of that, so I know this facility very well. Dr. Linda Freed runs that place. And last but certainly not least is Dr. Ashwan Vasan. He is the Commissioner of Health here in New York City. But I'm going to start with you, Marjorie Jean-Jacques, since you're the only one on the panel as we sit here today. I know Mary Lake, I saw you in the movie, so I know you've been there many times. But I'm going to start with you, Marjorie Jean-Jacques. What does it feel like in the water? Because I'll just say, as a black girl, the fact of getting my hair wet, that means a whole different thing. Because I looked at it and I thought, God, I would love to do that. But I saw Althea with her shower cap, her bathing suit cap, and I just thought, maybe I could do that. But, you know, we are more alike than we are different, except when it comes to black girl hair and white girl hair. Once it gets wet, it's a whole, your day is done and done. But you have been there in the water. What does it feel like?
It actually feels great.
Does it?
But it takes a little bit of courage because you're going there. Yeah, you're going there and your hair is up, you're not wearing any makeup.
Yeah.
You might have a few rolls someplace you don't want someone to see.
Hello, my name is Gail. Yes. I think rolls are actually cute, but go ahead.
And some of us know how to swim, some of us don't. So when you go in there, you're just hoping it's a safe space. And the beautiful thing about the Y is it always is. Someone's gonna make you feel welcome. Someone's gonna say, don't worry, come on in. And as a black girl, when you get your hair wet, someone's gonna sit there and talk to you while you dry it before you could go outside.
Yeah, I was struck by that. I was struck by how what going to the Y, or taking the Aquafit class, one woman had been through a divorce. I fell in love with Patty, the instructor, who I fell in love with her, and she's picking up Dick, who is older. But just her enthusiasm and the music that they played. At one point they were playing, she's a maniac, maniac. And then to hear that it's a really good workout. Is it a really good workout? Because I always thought Aquafit class, you're just sort of, bouncing around in the water. To be honest with you, I did not think of it as a workout. But listening and watching them, it seemed to be a bona fide workout.
It's an incredible workout because, you're buoyant in the water. If you have sore knees, sore elbows, so you don't feel any of that. There's no impact. So a lot of people, especially our seniors, have a lot more freedom in the water than they would if they were doing a class on land or a yoga class where they had to get up and down.
I think I might try it. Mary, if you'll take me. Yeah. I'll go with you, Mary. I would actually like to try it. I was struck by what Mary said about the statistics with the population, that there will be more people who are over the age than under the age. What can you say about that, Claire, as someone who's over at the AARP Foundation? Because the day I turned 50, and I know that they're two separate entities, you work together, but they're two separate entities. The day I turned 50, honest to God, the AARP showed up at my house. I had never filled out a form. I don't know where it came from, but it was there, my name spelled correctly and everything. And do you know, the first thing I did was I called them and I said, please take my name off of your mailing list. I know. And I think that's so bad. As I sit here today, I'm now 68, and as I sit here today, I don't know why I didn't just say, yes, I'm 50, and I felt that.
Yeah.
But there was something about getting the AARP magazine that just really irritated me. So as we sit here and know that there's going to be more of us than there are of them, you say that, do you think that we're ready for that the country is ready?
Oh, we're absolutely not ready. So AARP Foundation is at its core an anti-poverty organization. So we're focused on the 38 million Americans over 50 today who are living within 250% of the poverty line. Those people are also actually more likely to be socially isolated than their better off peers. And so are we as a society ready to cut people off of opportunity? the opportunity to remain productively engaged because they can't get a job due to ageism that they've internalized, what you internalized when you didn't want that card at 50.
I was glad I made it to 50. I just didn't want the magazine.
It's a good magazine.
I know it is. It is. I know I'm saying that was wrong. That thinking was wrong.
So we really need to figure out how to facilitate people to be as independent, as healthy, as productive, as engaged, as happy as they can be for as long as possible. And so that's really the core of our mission, is working to really drive structural change in our society, open up opportunity, empower people to seize that opportunity. And we say that we work for and with older adults in trying to reduce poverty in America because they're really our partners. We center on the fact that there are volunteers. We have almost 30,000 older adult volunteers nationwide that are delivering our programs. But they're also our participants, and their success is our success. And so I think there's enormous opportunity, but we have a lot of barriers we need to break down, and we need to fundamentally change how we look at older Americans and what their inherent value is, how much they still have to give.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I say this all the time, that Walter Cronkite, who was like the bastion of CBS News, had to retire guys at 65. He didn't want to retire. He had to retire at 65. And I sit here at 68 just feeling, in many ways, I feel there's still so much to do. I wanted to talk to you, Linda, about when we look at this epidemic of loneliness, because most people associate it with people who are older. For instance, when they went to the Aquafit class, they weren't looking for friends. They were looking to take a swim class. And part of the epidemic of loneliness is because you don't think you have any friends.
So loneliness is it's an epidemic. Let's put it that way first.
For
it's
all
something that
ages?
we have for all ages, particularly severe for older adults and for young adults and teenagers. Particularly severe for both groups, for some shared reasons and some different reasons. But it's essentially a consequence of the way we've constructed 21st century society. So we designed this.
We designed this problem?
We designed this problem.
How so?
We built it. We built it through many things, through our obsession with independence, through the ways we designed the built environment to keep people apart rather than bring them together. We designed it in terms of the way we segregate people by age. The US is now the most age-segregated society in the history of the world. We didn't used to be.
We're the most age-segregated? What does that mean? How do we do that?
It means that older people live separate from young people, that people don't mix it up across generations, except maybe in a family. And people don't know each other.
Yeah.
People don't know each other. So, and the workplace is segregated in a lot of ways, even though all of these things don't turn out to be useful. So, for example, intergenerational teams are much more creative than single generation teams, and they're much more
I see that all the
productive.
time, yes.
Companies that have intergenerational teams do great. So we've designed loneliness in a lot of ways, and loneliness is not social isolation so much as a feeling. It's a feeling that makes you sick. It's a feeling that you don't have meaningful relationships that are satisfying, and it hurts. It hurts like hunger hurts if you're really hungry. And it's a signal that you need to correct it. But the problem is that we designed out many of the social institutions in this century that brought people together in civic life, that built community. All of the organizations in civic life have been disinvested in so many ways. That why is precious, because you keep going. And so we have a dearth of places where people can find each other.
And Dr. Vassan, you always say that you can find community in many places, and community is crucial, really, to our existence.
Yeah, it's, prior to becoming commissioner, I ran a nonprofit whose tagline was "Community is the therapy." And that's because the folks we were serving were at a lot of risk, a much higher risk than the general population of being isolated, And that isolation was a precursor to, mental health crises and social crises and homelessness and incarceration and a whole bunch of other social ills. Now, for the rest of us who might not be as great risk of that kind of crisis, the body still keeps the score of loneliness and isolation.
Say that again.
The body keeps the score. It really does take a toll. We know that social isolation advances aging, premature aging. We know it worsens your hormones and your endocrine system. It worsens your brain function. It worsens your immune system and makes you more susceptible to illness. And so there's a physiological risk of being isolated. And so breaking isolation, however you do it, whether it's in a swimming pool. I'm so glad I got to watch most of the movie. I was thinking about my 80 or 85-year-old and 83-year-old mother and father.
Are you going to take them to Aquafit class?
I was thinking the same thing. My dad, who's 85, just fell a few months ago in California. And I've seen, he's recovering, thankfully, but how isolated that's made him.
Yeah.
He's got my mother, he's got my relatives around, but man, how the mobility and the lack of mobility, but also psychologically, how that's really impacted his sense of connectivity. So I think what Dr. Freed, what Linda is talking about is how do we invest in a new kind of social infrastructure? And when I'm a government person now, government's role is to invest in the things that society needs and that kind of infrastructure, whether it be supporting programs through the Y, building programs like the clubhouse that I ran for people with mental illness, or building programs for people who are at risk of homelessness, or young people. Building infrastructure in the real world as well as even in the digital world. I know that there's a lot of negativity around the amount of time that we spend on our devices, but if the alternative is spending time on a device alone or doing that in a group, at least it's a first step towards some semblance of connectivity. So I think we have to be really creative to manage this transition where people over 65 will be the dominant age group. We're going to have to build a lot more social infrastructure.
I rather like hearing that the people over 65 are going to be the dominant age group. I actually think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. But I like to, at the Y, Marjorie Jean-Jacques, the focus was on in the water, but there's so much more that happens there in terms of building community. I was also very touched by the programs that you offer there and what you encourage people to do.
The wonderful thing about the Y is that we give people a platform to be their best selves. And we hire incredible staff. As you saw Patty, she was a connector. That's not just a job for her, it's a passion. The fact that she's on her way to work picks up a member. We have so many Patties that walk into our building every day.
How about the other lady who was a substitute and now was planning to do one class, guys, and then she ended up teaching 7 classes a week?
The Y has a way of doing that to you. I started working at the Y as something to do while I went to NYIT to be an architect. 40 years later, I'm still here.
Really?
It's like I drank the Kool-Aid. But I've been able to do like 10,000 different jobs. I've gotten to use my architectural degree. I've gotten to oversee a pool program. I've run transitional housing. I've run a guest room. The Y creates an environment where you can be your best self, where you can learn, grow, and thrive.
Linda, you pointed out that there are young people here, or Mary pointed out there are young people in the audience. What do you say to them? Because when my mom turned 50, honest to God, I thought she was so old. I just thought, golly, and I was 20-something. And I just thought, man, my mom is really getting old. And that just seems so far away for me to celebrate my 50th birthday. So what do you say to young people here who are looking at this thinking, this I can't really relate to this at this particular time, and maybe they can't, but they should start thinking about it, should they not?
Absolutely.
And to encourage older people, too, to be engaged.
So I actually teach a course at Columbia for undergraduates and graduate students and auditors from the community, by the way. if anybody wants to take it. It's called Your Longer Life, and it's for all of us to tackle imagining what the future of our lives would be. So for 20-year-olds, to understand what it means to have the gift of 30 more years, what you can do with it, what it could mean, how you make it healthy, because there's a lot of great news in here. One, that you get 30 more years.
Yes.
But every smart undergraduate, if I ask them, do they want it, they're always conditional. They say, if I'm healthy.
Yes.
So the next great news.
Is that a bad thing to say?
No, it's fabulous. It makes sense
if I'm
to
healthy,
me.
yeah.
Mary Lake said it before. But the great news is that public health science now says it's possible to do that. And now what we need is collectively, as a collective action problem, to deliver through the health department and many other, and the Y and all sectors, the ability for everybody to have that health and longer lives. And then there's more good news, because the science, and I'm saying this for the 20-somethings in the room or the 15-somethings in the room, the great news is that life doesn't end at 65.
It really doesn't.
You keep that human beings keep growing, they keep developing assets, that people who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s can accomplish things that, I'm sorry to say to the 20-year-olds, you can't do it when you're 20.
Yeah, but you got to use your body and your mind. You
Right.
have to stay active.
Right.
And be engaged
Exactly.
in society.
But people keep growing through their lives, and they keep building capabilities that lead to a whole new realm of creativity. But most of all, people of every age want meaning and connection and purpose,
Yes.
the ability to contribute to their world. And what we need to do, because there's a huge gap between what people want as they get older and what society enables people to do, is build the kinds of social infrastructure, social programs, social institutions that could bring people together for good.
I like, too, what Mary Lake said, that if you have children or grandchildren, hello, grandmother here. I'm very excited. My favorite grandson just turned 2. And I know I'm not the only one that had a grandchild, but honest to God, when it happens to you, you think, I've never seen a more genius child. I mean, everything he does, eating an avocado, turning on the water, opening the door, is so damn fascinating. So, but to hear that those kids born today could live to be over 100, because I always say I want to live a long life if I'm healthy. I don't want to be here if I'm in the corner drooling and don't have control of my faculties, where they're saying, it's your turn to change, Mom. I want to do what do we need to do to ensure, Claire, that our lives are healthy and thriving and complete?
I mean, stay active is
Stay
stay active and stay engaged. I think it's a really simple formula. Actually being able to do it is harder. But the formula is simple, and developing and creating the structures that enable people to stay active and engaged, I think that's really the critical thing. We talked a bit about, and I think you said it so beautifully about the why, that it didn't have to be Aquafit, it could have been pickleball. We think what happened there is organic. It
Yes,
was
that's what I liked
community.
about it, yes.
But we see that all the time. And so our focus is, how do we create the environment? We're actually grateful to Dr. Freed, because years ago, she recognized that volunteerism, if it was significant and sustained, not just showing up one day, but engaging in a significant and sustained way on something that really mattered, could change people's lives. And so we have a program called Experience Corps that brings older adults into the schools, and they bring children up to grade level reading by 3rd grade, which changes their outcomes for their future. And so, I mean, I think it's really about, how do you create this space to allow people to live their best lives?
And I also want to hit on the loneliness epidemic, too, because people who are lonely aren't seeking out other lonely people, true? I mean, they don't want to hang out with each other, nor do they want to admit that they're feeling lonely, right? So what do we do? How do we reach somebody like that really does want to get engaged and does want to get involved? But, you know, loneliness for a lot of people it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign people don't care about you, or you feel inadequate. What do we do about that?
I think there's a lot of shame associated with feeling lonely.
Yes.
With being isolated. And so back to this point, I mean, I think we need to create no wrong door. We need to make ample opportunity for people to connect with one another in whatever way meets them where they are, wherever they are. If they're feeling really inhibited by their loneliness, or they're just bursting with desire but lack opportunities. And this is where we're really excited in the city, because in the coming weeks we're going to be launching a massive agenda to organize our city around healthier, longer lives. And why are we doing that? It's because we think it's the civic project of our time. And we think that it's the public health project of our time in this post-pandemic or post-emergency era. But part of living up to that mission of extending life and making life healthier for all New Yorkers is also equity, because the Y isn't always accessible to everybody. A lot of programs
the Y
aren't.
is accessible.
I think it
That's
is,
what
but my point is, I think like it's just about how do you break down the barriers to get someone.
to go?
I mean, simple things, right? Transportation, economic insecurity, competing demands, time, right? And so it's not about anything the Y is doing or not doing. It's really what are the social and economic factors in people's lives that hold people back, and how do we make sure that it's not just healthier, longer lives, but it's healthier, longer lives for everyone. Because when we look at the health outcomes, there are incredible disparities across the city. COVID brought that to bear, right? And shined a light on that. We ignore those lessons at our peril. And so as we start to talk about aging and longevity and healthy longevity, how do we do that equitably? How do we make sure that people, like the folks that AARP Foundation are talking about, people at or near or close to the poverty line are centered in that process? Because when you center people who are at the margins, everyone benefits. Everyone benefits.
There is something, though, I didn't know if the water has healing power. I like the guy that had the long beard, and he said, even though I look odd or have a different look, I'm still embraced and accepted here. And I was wondering, and when Sharif said, water is life, water is life, I thought that too was very, very powerful. So how do you encourage people to understand the importance and that they should start doing it sooner rather than later? You can start with being kind to yourself, number one. You can start with that.
I think access matters. So when I'm a geriatrician, and I used to be in clinical practice, and I would so often see somebody who came in because they were feeling sick, and after taking a history, realized that the reason they felt sick was they had no reason to get up in the morning. And I started, this was a long time ago, but and before I designed Experience Score, which came out of that learning from my patients, but I started writing prescriptions for people to go and find something that mattered to them and volunteer. The first guy I learned this from was a guy who had just retired from being a CEO at 68. And he was sick from this. And then he couldn't find any place to cash in his prescription. Nobody wanted him. He went to one organization which didn't find out what he did 2 months before when he retired, and they put him in a corner licking stamps.
Wow.
So they didn't recognize, all they saw was an old man.
Old man, yeah.
They didn't understand the person, and there was no place that wanted him, who wanted to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and we have to change that perception.
I think it's also
right.
important not to make assumptions, like they assume that he could only do that. Understanding who people are by asking them, what is it that you want? Like, we created a Center for Community Impact, and we're working with our communities and working with partners to understand what the community need is and how do they want it met. Because we can decide, hey, we're going to do A, B, and C, and no one will come.
Yeah.
And understanding that there is not perfection, but there's trial and error, and there's value in failing and learning from that failure and moving forward. I think it's really important, and you'll be surprised the ways the community will form when you give people that opportunity to be seen and to be heard.
And sometimes when you let them know what you need, I went to CVS recently to get a prescription, and you're standing there and they say, date of birth. And I said, 12/28/54, and the young person behind the counter went, wow. I know. They went, wow. like he was looking at Methuselah or something. I go, yep, 12, 28, 54. Wow. But Mary, we are here because you went to the Y. You had hip surgery. You went to the Y. What did you see in that class that you thought people need to know this story? What was it for you?
Can you hear this? Can everybody hear me?
No.
Okay. I don't think it's on. I come from an academic background, professor, and I think that Linda and everybody else in academics would probably agree that it's highly competitive and everybody is judging everybody else. Every time you say something, somebody judges you and agrees with you or contests it. That group is the first place in my entire life where you could go and nobody cared what you looked like or who your father was or how much money you had or where you'd gone to school. Nobody said, oh, and where did you graduate from? Or what did your dad do? Or what kind of job do you have? They really didn't care. And they were undressed, unmade up. I'm glad you like the roles. I'm not so sure I do.
I have great appreciation for roles, Mary Lake. Great appreciation.
But it's the only place I have ever, and Angeli McCormick, who is the CEO of the Westport Y, is here today. It's the only place I've ever been in my entire life where people were accepted because they walked in and smiled. And nobody asked questions. And the reason we made the film was because I had never seen a situation like that. And I'd like to ask all of you how you reproduce that.
Yeah.
How you take the judgment and the negative responses out of people's interactions, how you teach them that acceptance will lead to a community.
That's a great question. That will be our last question, and we'll start with you and work our way down to Dr. Freed.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the answer, but I'm going to take a guess. I actually, and you know, I'm not over 50 yet. I am a member though, because you can join at 18. But I will say, I actually think there is that's part of the magic of growing older, and it's something we should look to our elders for. We have a program called TaxAid. We're the 4th largest tax preparer in the country, and it's run by volunteers. We have 20 staff members and 26,000 volunteers, and that community, I was just with the leaders in Minneapolis, 100 people nationwide who came together. Some of them are using walkers and canes. They have various mobility challenges. They're struggling with things in their lives. They've gone through a lot in their lives, and they have this unbelievable, they're working hard, they're building this incredible program every single year, but their patience and decency and kindness with each other is extraordinary. So I do think part of it is something beautiful about longevity, is that we grow in our compassion and we grow in our acceptance of others because we've seen more.
I love kindness is one of my favorite words, and what you said about decency and kindness. You can never go wrong when you give more of that. Marjorie Jean-Jacques?
I think for us, we created our innovation hub to look at the ways to scale our programs, not only to scale them, not duplicate, because each community is different and everybody needs a different experience, but understanding what the basic needs are, and then like Dr. Ashwan said, creating multiple doors that people can explore. Because if I'm lonely today, maybe the first group I go to doesn't speak to me, or the second group I go to doesn't speak to me. But providing those multiple doors until I find the group that does work for me. And I think the best opportunity or visualization of this I saw was at the Dodge YMCA. We have swimming lessons, and you have all these parents that hang out and swim. And one day, guy had to be 6'6", African American, but like a football player.
Was he single?
Not sure, but he opens his backpack and he pulls out a knitting needle.
Knitting needles?
And yarn.
Knitting needles. Wow.
And yarn. And he starts to knit. And people are watching him, some of them asking, is he single? And he can knit. But
Yes,
the next week, somebody else came and brought knitting needles.
Wow.
And by the 8th week, we had a full-blown knitting circle that was intergenerational.
Yes.
They were teaching each other different stitches. They were proudly showing off their packets. And the younger kids wanted to know, hey, I want to do that. Because somewhere in that group, there was someone that they wanted to be modeled after.
Yes.
Be it the grandmother, the 6'6" guy, the high school girl. Like, if someone had paid me to say, come up with a knitting circle,
Yes.
I would have been like, that's not going to happen.
Yes.
And that's what innovation is. It's trying different things and partnering. Find an organization that aligns with you and see what they do. We're actually now working with Oats Senior Planet, offering senior digital literacy. And we figured that out by doing a survey. And they said, this is something we'd like to learn.
Yes.
And now we're partnering and we're providing this service. They had the skill, we had the population. And it's using those opportunities to build partnerships to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And that's to make your community better, whatever that looks like.
Nice. Well, you have to admit, a black man 6'6" pulling out some knit needles, that would get your attention.
I did a double take.
Dr. Bassan.
What you said, Mary, about I'm a recovering academic, and so I felt judged every single moment I was an academic. So I decided to go into government where I'm never judged for anything. But you said something earlier, Gail. You said it very kindly here, less kindly backstage, which is that we're in an era where people feel like they can just be mean and unkind to each other. And I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here because I do think that's where...
No, because I said people are so shitty to each other, and I'm sick of it. That's what I said backstage.
That's yeah. I mean, she's right, and I do think that's where technology has been a really pernicious force in our society. So, two things. One is, and we're in an environment and we're in a time where people want to work from home and work in their pajamas and be flexible. But I have seen the benefits of bringing people together in teams and looking each other face to face and smelling each other and just looking at body language. We are animals, right? We are animals.
Yes.
And it is programmed in us to be connected. We are evolutionarily meant to be in close proximity to one another, and we are not meant to be distant from one another in the ways that we have been through the pandemic and through technology. And it's why we're unpacking or in part why we're unpacking such a rough mental health crisis. So one is creating as many spaces as possible to physically come together in a place is crucial. And we can do some of that in government, but it's also communities organizing themselves in informal ways as well. Two is intergenerational exchange. Getting a group of peers all competing for that same tenure track position, you're going to find some nasty people in that group. But honestly, it's a lot harder to be nasty to one another in person, and it's a lot harder to be nasty to each other when you've got people from vastly different stages and perspectives, because not everybody wants the same thing. And when you don't want the same thing in a place, you can just be yourself, or at least there's more opportunity to just be yourself.
There's something to be said too, guys, I think, about intergenerational teams. I'm starting to hear more and more about that. There used to be eye rolls on either side. And now, I love it when the people I'm working with are younger or brighter, because it just forces you to raise. I always like to be surrounded by people who are better than I am, because it forces you to raise your game. I'm a big, big, big fan of that. You have the last word, Dr. Freed.
Well,
Make it good.
I agree with everything. So to add one other thought, how do we care about taking things to scale? How do we care about building these opportunities which will be good for individuals? And I think it's important to think about what this could mean for society. To speak to Ashwin, where the return on investment is. The return on investment is huge in terms of all of our well-being and opportunities to be optimistic about having longer lives. But the return on investment is also the assets of a quarter of the US population being older that they could bring to create a better society. Older people are more generous, more kind, more pro-social, caring about the future. In fact, I've come to think about older people as the pay-it-forward age group.
And what's the definition of old when we're older? What is that?
Well, it's usually 5 years older than you are.
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
But,
I'll take that.
but if we think about what it could mean to have a quarter of the society with those motivations and immense capabilities to solve really complex problems and wanting to get up in the morning and give back and make a difference, what could that do for our collective future?
Right.
And then if we had, the third thing is if we have programs like this Aquafit program, what it did was it attracted people for health and kept them for community.
Yeah.
And in keeping them for community, Mary Lake and I have talked about this a bunch, what it did was build what sociologists 50 years ago described as the strength of weak ties.
The strength of weak
Building a network of connections with people who aren't your best buddy and just like you.
Yeah.
But a network of connections of the people you could ask to borrow a cup of sugar from. That's the fabric of a successful society.
Yeah.
And building it one program at a time could build back a better future.
Yeah. I watched the film twice, and each time I saw something different that I didn't see, and you just walk out feeling really inspired to know that there really are a lot of great people in the world doing some really great things. Thank you, panel. Thank you. Thank you, people, for coming. Thank you. Thank you, Mary Lake and Frank. Thank you very much. And I understand there's a reception outside the door, and the food is free. Run! Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was good.